Course and data sets. So first let's talk about what data sets are. So I've got Spider Glider here on the screen, and right now he's flying, and one of the words that is being shown is bus, another word that's being shown is dad. That is being driven by, right now it's being driven by the default data. Um, so I'm on this target right now, dad, and the distractors for that target are cat, bus, and mom. Um, that's the default data, but I don't always play Spider Glider every time with the same words. So sometimes when I come to Spider Glider, I play it with those words. Sometimes I play with other words. If you look at the warp menu scene, um, if I play this and I find Spider Glider in there, um, click on Spider Glider, click on this right here, and then these are all the units. And each one of these will play Spider Glider with different words. So if I click on 4, and I'll pause it here for a second, you'll notice that there's the default data there, but there's also this new object called course data. And these are the words I'm going to be playing with this time. Book, paper, crowns, apple. Book has the distractors of paper, pants, backpack. If I warped to a different unit, the course data would be different again. So if I run this one more time and click Spider Glider, last time we went to 4, let's go to 10. The course data is different. Socks, dress, pink, white. So the game's staying the same, but the data sets are changing. The data set, the default data is just what gets run when you're working in the editor. So this is just here so I can hit play in the game, and the game just works by its own. I can just start up that scene by itself. And it's there for a fallback in case any course data is not available. It'll play the default data. But course data is mostly what we're interested in. So let's talk about where that course data lives and how it gets into the game. So the first let's start with how it gets into the game. So if you have a scene initializer, here I've got the Spider Glider initializer, and if I come here, Spider Glider, don't save, and I look at the scene initializer, my Spider Glider, my scene initializer here is the Spider Glider initializer, and you'll notice it inherits from Dataset initializer. That's all you need to do in your scene to get access to the course data. If you inherit from Dataset initializer, then Dataset initializer, the base class, will do all the work of finding that course data object and handing it off to you. And at the very end, it will call handle args, which is an abstract method, and that's the method that your initializer will have to implement in order to inherit from Dataset initializer. And it will pass you two things. It will pass you the unit args, and it will pass you the encounters. The encounter args. The unit args are things that are that don't change from question to question. So if you have anything that's constant throughout the whole game, so if I look at bright spot initializer, it has some unit args in the form of a bright spot data set, and that bright spot data set is just a random min and max count. So sometimes we'll only play with a few fireflies, and sometimes we'll play with a lot. This doesn't change from question to question. My random min and my random max in bright spot will always stay the same. But what does change from question to question is the encounters, and here I'm using a list of answer encounters, and answer encounters have just an image and an audio file. So there's two kinds of data that come through in your data sets. It's the data set for the activity, the unit args, and then the list of encounters. These are usually your things that don't change from question to question, and these are things that do change from question to question. That's not always true. but that's the general pattern. Um, so so where does that live? The course lives in JSON. Um, let me go to a picture here real quick that kind of illustrates this. So there's three places that the course might be. It might be in your client, it might be in the backend repository, and it might be in the AWS database. Um, so let's talk about these two places for a second. When you add data sets, you'll be making changes to the backend repository. So the backend repository, if you go to Bitbucket, we've got two main repositories. We've got the Joy School app v1 right now, and we've got the Joy School backend. This Joy School backend is the repository you'll be making changes to if you if you want to add data sets. In particular, the file you'll be changing is this file right here, y4efl.json. So this is that file. This is my copy of the Joy School backend repository, and this is that file, y4efl.json. You'll see it's thousands and thousands of lines of JSON that define how the data set should work. We call all the data sets together, we call that the course. So the course defines what a student will do when they're on the program. Y4 means 4-year-olds. So this is for kids that are 4 years old, and it's EFL, English as a Foreign Language. So this is the English as a Foreign Language course for 4-year-olds. And first they're going to do Flickr show, and then they're going to do photo play, and then they're going to do word flurry, and on and on and on and on. And so that's what the course looks like in the backend repository. So if you want to add data sets, you'll need to make changes to this file, but you won't edit it by hand. We've got some tools to make editing this file a little easier. And then you'll pull request those changes to the backend repository. When you pull request these changes, your changes will get reviewed and approved and merged. And once they're merged, someone will manually upload that JSON to the database. And the JSON will get stored in the database in tables. And then the client then talks to the database when it gets the course. Right now, there are three places in the client where the course can exist. The first is in the player prefs. This is the main place where we want the course to be. This is where everything runs off of. So if it doesn't have a course in the player prefs, the client will reach out to get a course. The first place it will look, if it doesn't have it in the player prefs, is it will look for a build time course. What this build time course is at the time of the build, we go through the course, we go through all of the JSON, and we run some validation on it. So for example, here in Flickr show, the first thing the kid's going to get to, they're going to get a video, and that video is called O1 SI Hi Hello Goodbye, kind of a weird name. So one of the validation steps we run on that is we validate via code, does that video exist? If that video exists, then it means we can play that activity with that data set. If the video doesn't exist, it means when we try to go to that game with that video file name, the game's going to be stuck because it won't be able to find the video and you'll be stuck. Sorry, that's not what I wanted. Where'd my picture go? Here we go. So the build time course is at build time. What we do is we fetch the course from the database. We store a copy of that JSON file in the client under a resources folder. In fact, I'll show you where it is right now. At the time of making this video, the place that course is stored is under Allegra Global Course Editor Resources. This Y4EFL. This is my this is my build time course, and this course does not get checked into source control, does not get checked into Git, so that it just gets there at build time, and there's a little README about it. So the client will always try to run off the player prefs. If it can't find a course in the player prefs, it will look for that file in the resources folder called the build time course, and if it finds it, then it will stick it in the player prefs. If it can't find it there, then it will reach out to the database and fetch it from the database. But it should always find this one. It should. This is the course that we ran validation against, that we knew all the media files were there, and this one, if you have a build that has gone through our build process, this file will be there and will be a known JSON that is good and valid and works. If it didn't find it there, then it would reach out to the database and get a new copy of the database, or a new copy of the course. But there's no, right now we don't have versioning between the course and the database and the client, and so if you fetch a new course from the database, there's no guarantee that that course will work with that client, and so that's why at build time we do we hard code the course at build time, and that way we know it's valid. In the future, we plan to add versioning so that you can upgrade your course with your client over time. But until we get that, we just use the build time course. Okay, the third place that the course can be is a scene in the editor. The app itself will not use that scene. This scene is strictly here for ease of editing the JSON. Once you're done with the scene, you need to export the scene back out to one of these places. Well, really, you just need to export the scene back out to your backend repository, and then get the pull request. And then once it gets pull requested, it'll get merged into the database. Once we do a build, we'll fetch it from the database and stick it here. So you'll primarily be doing your editing in the scene. You'll save your scene out as JSON. You'll pull request that JSON. That JSON will get merged and then pushed up to the database. And then at the time of the build, the JSON will be fetched from the database, validation run against it, and will be stored as a file in a resources file on the client. So let's talk more about this scene, because this is where you'll be doing the bulk of your work. And so let's go there. So the first thing you'll want to do is you're going to want to clone this repository, clone the backend repository, and so you get access to the existing Y4 EFL JSON file. Once you have that, make a new scene in Unity, just an empty scene. And we've got this menu here called course, and there's a load feature. So the load can load, there's a few different options for loading. One, and this is why this picture is important, that picture I was showing before. You can load from the database or the server to your cache. Here cache means player prefs. So you can load it from the server to your player prefs. You can load it from the server to the scene. You can load it from the file to your player prefs or your cache. You can load it from the file to your scene, or you can load it from your local cache, your player prefs, to the scene. The one that you'll use most commonly is loading from file to scene. Make sure you've got the latest on the backend repository checked out, and then do a load from file to scene. You'll get a browser here. Locate your backend repository. Mine's right here. And then in that backend repository, locate the course file. It's under source, course, y4efl.json, and hit open. You'll get a warning saying this is a destructive operation, meaning if you've already loaded a scene, if you've already loaded up a course into this scene, then we're about to overwrite that course. So if you've been doing work here, you're about to lose it. But I'm in a new scene. I don't have any work I'm about to lose. So yes, overwrite my local changes. So what that does is this Y4EFL node is now the course. You don't really need the game view. In fact, I've made a custom layout that's just for editing the course that just limits me to these things because I don't care about the game view. And really all that's happening here is we're using Unity as a helpful JSON editor so that I don't have to edit JSON directly. So this structure right here that is the that you're seeing right here, the structure of game objects in this scene will get translated into the course that's JSON. So right here, we talked about this file O1S1 hello, hi, hello, goodbye. If I take off the goodbye there, I'm going to hit, let's say that's a change I wanted to make. And then I go course, save. There's only two places I can save it to. I can either save it to my local file, or I can save it to the local cache, or the player prefs. If I save it to the local file, let's look what happens. Navigate to your backend, source, course, Y4EFL, hit save, and yes, I want to replace this. If I've done it right now, I go to my backend repository, it detects a new change, and it detects a change to that JSON file, and the change that it detected is right on that line. It changed hi, hello, goodbye, just went to hi, hello. And that's what happens. So then if this is a change that I wanted, I'd commit this change, I'd make a commit message, and I'd push it up, and I'd pull request that change on the back end. Before you make a pull request, though, there's another step you should do. You should, I'm going to save this, well, I guess I won't, but I'm going to load it from the file to the scene again. I'm going to navigate to my backend, source course y4efl.json, open, destructive operation. This time I do have changes, but I'm okay loading it back up. So yes, overwrite my local changes, and here I've got y4efl again, and Flickr show on unit 1 is showing this. Now there's kind of something going on here. This course that says load from server to cache or from server to scene or whatever. Anytime, the way that our course importer works, anytime you import from here, whether you're loading it into the local cache or you're loading it into the scene, it's always going to go to the local cache. So even though right now I didn't specifically say load from file to cache, I said load from file to scene. Even though I went from file to scene, on the way to putting it in the scene, it loaded into player prefs first. And that's important because the player prefs are what the validation tests run on. So if I come here to Unity and I go window, oh, they moved it in the new Unity. Test runner is what I want. General test runner. I'll dock this here. If I switch to play mode tests, you'll see I've got tests for every single activity that we have. I just changed the Flickr show. I changed one of the file names in the Flickr show units. So if I run this, it should fail. Do I want to save my scene? I don't have anything in there that I really need, so I'm not going to save. I'm just going to run the test. It takes a minute to run and start up. And so this is just a test scene that's Unity's using right now. We don't actually need it, and it should close once the scene's done. Oh, it didn't close itself, which is lame. But you can see that here this validation test failed. It says datasets are valid, is not, and you can look here to see what the error message is. error validating dataset expected that the file exists, but it didn't exist. And this is the file that didn't exist. Hi, hello doesn't exist. And that's because I took off the goodbye and used goodbye. So if I discard my changes to this file, and then I come back here and I reload it from the file, I don't even need to load it to the scene. I can just load it to the cache. So I'm going to load it from file to cache. Pick the file and load it into your player prefs, and then rerun those tests, and they should pass this time. So a couple things that are important there. It's important to keep straight where you're doing your changes. You load a file into a scene, do changes, save the scene back out to the file, and then anytime you want to run validation, you got to stick those. You got to get the course into the player prefs. You can either reload it from the file into the player prefs, or if you want to, you can use the course save to local cache, and it'll save you what you have in your scene to your player prefs. But that's what your validation runs off of. Okay, so that is that. So let's talk about validation. And then after we talked about validation, we'll talk about how to run a course, or how to make it something new in the course. So actually, I lied. Let's start with how to add stuff to the course. So I'm going to go load from file to scene, backend, Y4EFL, yes, override my local changes, and here's the course. So right now, I can add things to one of these 6 lessons. These are lessons that the student will actually see, or I can add things to the teacher menu. So for your purposes, you can add things. It depends on where you're adding things. Let's pretend like we're just adding something to the teacher menu. So if I go course insert course item, this is kind of a smart insert. It will look at what you're selected on, and it will insert whatever comes below it. So the shortcut is Command-Shift-I. So if I hit insert course item right now, it makes a new activity. And then I change that activity name to be, let's say, find the object. Find the object. If I do course insert course item again, now it inserts a unit. And then if I do insert course item again, it inserts an encounter, a target encounter. If I do insert course item again, it inserts a distractor. And if I try to do insert course item again, it fails and logs an error. It tells you you can only add a course item on one of these things above. You can't add a course item below a distractor. So it defaulted when I added this encounter to answer encounter, but let's remove that, and let's instead say that I want my encounter to be an image and audio encounter. An image. Well, I guess let's keep it as answer encounter. So answer encounter. So right here, there's no place to put the skill code. So let's say that this is dog, and this is cat. The distractor is cat, and I need to say dog underscore A there, and then I need to say dog is the name of the audio file, and then cat. Let's say it's cat underscore B and cat. Now I'm just picking files from here, but there are spreadsheets that help you know what it should be. So if I go to this, I can't remember what it's called. I think it's called Media Spec is the main source of truth. Media Spec Tanya Tripp. you find the activity that you're working on, so like word flurry right here, um, and here's unit 1, data set 1. The first target is bus. They want the image to be bus underscore B, and they want the audio to be bus. And then they want the distractors to be yellow A, cat A, and bike A. So let's pretend like let's actually pretend like I'm doing this one. So let's change this to bus. They wanted bus B, and the distractors were those. So bus underscore B. They want this to be bus. I'm going to change this, since it's a distractor, I'm going to change this to be just an image encounter, because look, there's no audio required for the distractors. And I'm going to say this one is yellow. Yellow. And my arguments just needs an image now, not an audio. But it's yellow A, cat A, and bike A. Yellow A, and then let's do cat and bike, and cat underscore A, bike underscore A. And that's my first distractor, my first target. And then I need, the next one is bike with bus, yellow, and cat. So then I copy this, and it's going to be bike. And then I just got to remember to go in here and say bike underscore B. Is it B again? No, it's A. Bike underscore A. Bike. And then they still want yellow and cat A, but now they want bus instead of bike. So I'll delete that one, copy that one, and this is now bus, and it's bus A. Is it bus A or bus B? Bus B. So they want bus B. So there you go. So those are my first two distractors, or my first two targets and encounters for that one. Then I'd make cat and yellow, and on and on and on. And then let's pretend like I'm just doing a whole bunch of these, and I'm making however many. If I go, notice the unit numbers have these. This is made so if I want to reorder the units there's a tool in the course menu that says update unit and sequence numbers. So if you click that, update unit and sequence numbers, then it auto updates those numbers to be unit. So now let's say I want to switch unit 4 and unit 1. Unit 1 I want to go there, and unit 4, collapse that, unit 4 I want to go there, or 1 I want to go there. Then I call update, and it renumbers them for me. And then I would course save this to my local file, backend repository, source, course, y4efl, hit save. Yes, I want to replace it. And then in my backend repository, I get these new changes. I look them over, and it says, "Look, you've got new encounters, new stuff." If it's stuff I want, then I commit it, push it up, make a pull request. But before I do, I should load from file to scene, or load from file to cache. And load it into my player prefs, and if I run my tests, they'll all pass right now. But you'll notice if I collapse all these, there is not a test for find the object. That doesn't exist yet, so I'd have to create that. So let's see how we get our test to run. First, I'm going to go to the find the object scene specific folder. Oh shoot, but I'm not in there. Well, let's look at Spider Glider. Spider Glider, scene specific folder. In the Spider Glider scene specific folder, in every scene specific folder, there are these files called dataset validation. And they can be pretty simple, but this is how you get it to show up. At a minimum, this is what you need to specify. You need to specify that the interaction code is your scene name. And this dataset validation class, the base class, is what does all the heavy lifting to run your tests. So it will verify that any of your encounter. Yeah. Anyways, but at a minimum, you need a file that says dataset validation and has protected string override interact, and you specify the interaction code that you want to return. And the interaction code is just your scene name. So yeah, that if I make a new one of these, like let's just for funsies, get find the object to. Well, I don't have find the object, so I'm not going to do that. But hopefully you get the idea. There's a few things that happen. There's a method you can override if you've got a dataset validation. So like, let's look at TuneUp. TuneUp dataset validation. TuneUp does a little bit more. It specifies the interaction code. It specifies that the minimum number of encounters is 0. That's because TuneUp, the game TuneUp, doesn't ask the student any questions. It just plays a song and has the kids sing along. So this says, don't expect any questions. 0 questions being asked is okay. And then it has validate the dataset. It passes in a TuneUp dataset specified here. If your activity doesn't use a dataset, then you just pass empty unit args, like Spider Glider does, because Spider Glider doesn't use a dataset. It only has encounters. If you need to, but if you have a dataset, and you want to run any validation on it, then you do that. So TuneUp has a song title. That song title is a name, video file name, and instrumental file name. We need those files to exist. So when we run validation, we assert that the video exists and we assert that the audio exists. Now, if you have a data set, like TuneUp has a data set, if you have a data set, you need to do your own asserts to assert things about your data set that they're valid. If you're just using encounters, like here in Spider Glider, we don't have any asserts. But Spider Glider uses answer encounter. And the encounters will already have assertions for you. So if I go to Spider Glider, image and audio encounter base, go to its base class, and validate arguments. And it already has asserts for me. So I've got an image name and an audio name. Well, I got to assert that the audio line exists and assert that the image exists. So if you're using counters, the encounter should have the validation for you. If you're using a data set, then you need to write some of your own validation to validate whatever it is about your data set that's unique. So I hope that makes sense, and that this gets you started making data sets.